Long before the spark of fire lit the human world, our ancestors faced a planet locked in ice. The winds screamed through endless tundras, and survival was not a choice, it was an art. In an age without warmth, without tools of flame, humanity learned to adapt, to endure, and to outthink nature itself. They hunted under frozen skies, crafted shelters from bone and hide, and discovered the power of unity in the face of extinction. This is the untold saga of human ingenuity, the age before fire, when survival itself forged the first true strength of mankind. Before the world knew warmth, before the whisper of flame first danced between human palms, there was only ice. Vast, endless, merciless. The earth was a white silence. Mountains were swallowed by frost, oceans froze into mirrors, and the breath of life itself turned to vapor in the air. Yet, within that silence walked two souls, ancient, bound not by time but by the will to endure. They were not merely lovers or wanderers, they were fragments of the same eternal spirit, divided by fate and scattered across the centuries. In one lifetime, they were two hunters tracing mammoth herds beneath a sunless sky. In another, they were sparks of warmth in each other's dreams. Memories carried in the blood, like faint echoes of a promise never broken. In this frozen age, survival was more than hunger or shelter. It was the art of listening to the language of nature. The wind was not an enemy but a messenger. The stars were not distant fires but guides etched into eternity. The early humans, our ancestors, were not primitive as we imagine. They were poets of endurance, reading the secrets of the earth with bare hands and frozen hearts. To live in 40° C was to become part of the ice itself. Skin hardened, instincts sharpened, and every breath was a prayer to the unseen. There were no fires, no tools of flame, no warmth but what the body could hold. And yet, they thrived, not because they conquered nature, but because they surrendered to its rhythm. They observed how wolves huddled for heat, how snow could insulate as much as it froze, how the moon marked the migrations of beasts. Every discovery was born of necessity, but carried the quiet brilliance of divine intuition. Among them, those two ancient souls found each other in the middle of an endless snowfield, where death was near but love was nearer. They shared a single hide for warmth, not out of comfort, but to keep the sacred flame of life alive within them both. In their eyes, one could see a reflection of humanity's greatest truth, that connection, not fire, was our first source of heat. They built shelters from bones and hides, shaping them like the womb of the earth itself. They covered their bodies in layers of fur, understanding instinctively that survival meant harmony, not resistance. The cold was their teacher, and every frozen dawn was a test of faith. The world demanded stillness, patience, awareness. And through that stillness, something extraordinary awakened in the human spirit. The first sense of knowing, the first spark of what would one day become wisdom. As centuries passed, these souls would be born again and again, wandering through ages and empires, each lifetime carrying the same silent memory of that first frozen love. A bond forged before fire, before civilization, before even the idea of time. They were reminders of the human essence, resilience, and connection. In every age, we have chased warmth, in hearths, in hearts, in light. But long before fire, warmth was found in the simple act of sharing breath beneath a blanket of snow. That was the original fire, the one that burned in the human soul, unquenchable even by the coldest wind. And as we look back now, across millennia of evolution, we begin to understand that the Ice Age was not an era of suffering, but of awakening. It was there, in the silence and frost, that humanity learned the meaning of endurance, of love, of belonging. It was there that two souls, and through them, all of us, discovered that even in the absence of fire, we are the flame. The ice never forgave weakness. It tested every living thing that dared to walk upon its surface. For those ancient humans, survival was not a matter of strength alone. It was a quiet intelligence, a deep communion with the world around them. In the endless night of cold, they learned to survive not through conquest, but through creativity, shaping bone, stone, and instinct into tools of wonder. And among them, once again, two ancient souls moved like echoes in the mist, destined to meet, to part, and to meet again. In one life, they were a man and a woman who lived at the edge of a frozen river. He carved tools from obsidian and bone, the black stones shimmering like frozen stars in his hands. She wove hides and fibers into coverings that wrapped their fragile bodies against the bitter wind. Neither spoke much, for words froze too quickly in that air, but their eyes shared the same fire, an understanding that went beyond language, beyond fear. They had found each other again, though they did not remember how or why. Without fire, they learned to borrow warmth from the earth itself. The ground beneath the snow still carried a pulse, a faint heartbeat of the planet. They built shelters by digging into it, lining the walls with moss and skin, learning from the burrows of beasts. Each hut became a cradle of ingenuity, a symbol of the human spirit adapting to what the gods had withheld. Their tools were born of observation and patience. A sharp edge came not from force, but from rhythm, the gentle tapping of stone against stone, each strike carrying memory from 1,000 generations before. They hunted with precision, not violence, understanding that every kill was a sacred exchange, a balance between hunger and humility. And in those long nights when the cold pressed too deeply into their bones, they shared breath and silence. She would hum softly, a sound that seemed older than time, as if remembering the warmth of a fire that had never yet been discovered. He would listen, not to the melody, but to the memory it carried. Somewhere, across the ages, their souls recognized that sound. Their ingenuity was not only survival, it was art. The way they shaped the bones of mammoths into spears, or stretched hides to trap the faint heat of their bodies, was an act of creation that bordered on the divine. Every invention was guided by intuition, by that same mysterious force that had once drawn them together before names, before civilization. It was as if the universe itself whispered in their ears, "You are not meant to perish. You are meant to remember." And so they did. Even without flame, they learned to create warmth through movement, dancing beneath the stars to stir blood and spirit, wrapping their children in layers of fur, sleeping in circles where body met body and heartbeat met heartbeat. The warmth of community became their fire, glowing unseen but deeply felt. But the cold was cunning. It separated them once more. A storm came, a wall of white that swallowed the sky. He vanished into it, chasing the shadow of a reindeer herd. She waited by the frozen river for days that stretched into months, carving his name, or what she thought was his name, into a piece of stone. She did not know that centuries later, that same stone would be found, buried in permafrost, holding the faint trace of a human hand, a message from one soul to another across lifetimes. And in another age, another body, another skin, they would find each other again, unaware that their connection was older than fire, older than memory itself. The ingenuity that allowed humans to endure the cold was not merely a triumph of evolution. It was the physical reflection of the same creative spark that binds two souls beyond the limits of time. It was proof that survival, like love, is not about resistance. It is about remembrance. The same force that shapes tools from stone also shapes destinies from silence. And in the stillness of that Ice Age night, as the auroras danced above their shelter, those two souls, divided yet bound, carried within them the same eternal truth. The fire we seek has always lived within us. In the age before fire, when the cold ruled like a god and every dawn was uncertain, humankind learned the most profound truth of existence: that no one survives alone. The Ice Age was not only a trial of endurance, it was a mirror reflecting a deeper truth about connection. The wind was merciless, the hunger endless, but when hands reached for other hands, something unseen awakened. A warmth that even frost could not extinguish. It was in this sacred bond of togetherness that the spirit of humanity began to glow. Amid the endless white plains lived a small tribe, wanderers of the frozen earth. Among them were two souls, familiar and ancient, drawn together across lifetimes like stars orbiting the same invisible gravity. They had met before, though neither remembered. In one life they had been hunters, in another, healers. Now they were simply two figures within a circle of survivors, bound by the same instinct to protect what little life remained. Their tribe was more than a group. It was a living organism, breathing and thinking as one. Every task, from hunting to weaving, was shared, for isolation meant death. They worked together like the veins of a single body, each person vital to the pulse of the whole. And in that interdependence, they discovered something sacred. Cooperation was not just a means to live, but a revelation of unity. an echo of how all souls are intertwined. When storms came, they built walls of snow around their shelters, their arms moving in rhythm. When mammoths fell, every part of the beast, the meat, the bone, the fur, was divided equally, not from pity but from understanding. To take more than one's share was to weaken the circle. The two souls, who once survived side by side, often found their eyes meeting across the fireless camp, sharing silent gratitude. They knew that in every shared act, a quiet grace was born. The tribe's greatest strength was empathy. They watched over their elders, guarded their children, and sang softly to the dying, believing that each spirit returned to the sky to light the auroras. Life and death were not opposites. They were continuations of one another. This belief, passed through gesture and story, gave meaning to the cold. And yet fate, with its eternal symmetry, wove separation into their path once again. One night, as a blizzard descended upon their camp, chaos struck. The wind howled like a beast, tearing through their shelters, scattering everything they had built. The tribe split, some moving south toward valleys, others staying behind to protect what remained. The two souls, who had always found each other in every age, were torn apart once more. She was carried away by the storm with the southern group. He remained, guiding the weak through the white void. But the bond between them did not break. Across the miles of snow, she felt his absence as a silence inside her chest, as if the rhythm of the earth itself had faltered. And though they were lost to each other in that lifetime, their connection became part of the tribe's memory. Songs were sung of two spirits who moved as one, the twin flames of the cold. These songs survived longer than their bodies, passed down through generations, eventually becoming myths told by campfires once humanity discovered flame. In those stories, the tribe found identity, hope, and belonging. Proof that even in separation, unity endures. And this was the great awakening of humankind, to realize that warmth is not born of fire, but of fellowship. The community was a sacred web, each life a thread in something vast and luminous. Thousands of years later, when those two souls returned to new lives, in new bodies, under gentler skies, they would find each other again, perhaps in a crowded market or a silent glance between strangers. They would not remember the ice, the tribe, or the songs. But deep within, something would stir, a feeling of home, ancient and wordless. That is the mystery of connection, the truth that our survival, then and now, is not measured by what we conquer, but by what we share. The power of community is not just the story of the first humans. It is the story of all souls learning to remember that we were never meant to walk alone. The ice had reigned for millennia, a kingdom of silence, where survival was an unending prayer whispered into the wind. Yet within that cold stillness, something restless began to stir. It was not hunger, not fear, but curiosity, the invisible thread that pulls all creation toward awakening. It lived quietly in the minds of those early humans, flickering like a thought too shy to speak. And among them, two ancient souls, bound through lifetimes of frost and separation, were destined to become the keepers of that first light. They had known one another before, in ages when warmth came only from the closeness of bodies and the rhythm of shared breath. They had built together, lost together, and wandered through countless incarnations across the frozen earth. Now, in this lifetime, they were seekers, drawn not by survival alone, but by the itch to understand. She was the watcher of the skies, the one who saw patterns in the stars and rhythms in the wind. He was the dreamer of the ground, tracing shapes in the ash, colored soil, feeling for life beneath the ice. Neither knew what they sought, yet both felt the same invisible longing, as if something ancient was calling them from within the earth itself. It happened one night when lightning split the sky. A tree caught fire in the distance, a rare and terrifying vision in a world of white. The tribe fled from it, fearing it was the wrath of unseen gods. But the two souls did not run. They approached, trembling, their breath clouding in the air. For the first time, they saw movement that was alive yet untouchable, dancing light, golden and wild. It was beauty and danger in the same breath. They sat before it, awestruck. The fire spoke in a language older than words. It cracked and hissed like laughter and pain woven together. Its light painted their faces in shades of warmth they had never known. And in that moment, something deep within them remembered. It was as if they had carried this flame inside their souls since the beginning, a memory of the divine trying to find its reflection in the material world. But curiosity is never without sacrifice. When they tried to bring a burning branch back to their tribe, it burned through their hands. The pain was sharp, but within that pain lay revelation. To touch creation is to risk transformation. They learned to cradle the flame in stone, to feed it gently with breath, and to protect it from the jealous wind. When the tribe saw the light, fear turned into reverence. Fire became not just warmth, but meaning, a symbol of rebirth. It turned darkness into story, silence into song. And around that first flame, humanity changed forever. No longer bound entirely by the mercy of nature, they became co-creators of it. The flame was not a conquest, but a covenant, a partnership between the seen and unseen. And as the fire burned, those two souls sat side by side, knowing without speaking that they had found once again what they had always sought. Not the flame itself, but the reflection of their eternal connection within it. Every spark was a memory of their countless lives, every shadow a whisper of the separations they had endured. When the fire's warmth reached their faces, it was as if the universe exhaled. Finally, the light that had always existed within them had found form in the world. Their discovery was more than a triumph of survival. It was the moment humanity remembered its divinity. Ages would pass, and these two souls would return again and again, in temples, in cities, in quiet hearts seeking meaning. They would find each other beside hearths, under stars, across oceans. The flame between them, though unseen, would always burn, a reminder of that first night when curiosity became light, and two ancient souls, after lifetimes of separation, remembered they were never truly apart. Because the fire was never outside of them. It was within, waiting only to be remembered.